The most dangerous man in 1920s America wasn't a gangster from Chicago or New York. He was William Hale, a respected community pillar who orchestrated the murders of dozens of Native Americans while hiding behind his facade. His method? Convincing his own nephew to marry an Osage woman, then helping him kill her entire family one by one. But the true horror of the Osage murders isn't just what Hale did. It's how an entire community became complicit in this betrayal. Doctors falsified death certificates, undertakers destroyed evidence, local police blocked investigations. When the very system meant to protect becomes the weapon used against a people, can justice ever truly be served? This dark conspiracy is what we're examining today. Oil wealth in the Osage Nation, from poverty to prosperity. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to suddenly become one of the richest people in the world? This actually happened to an entire community in 1920s America. The Osage Nation, after facing generations of hardship and displacement, experienced an economic transformation so dramatic that it still astonishes us today. The story begins with loss. By the 1870s, the Osage had been forced onto a rocky, seemingly worthless reservation in northeastern Oklahoma. The US government assumed they were relegating the Osage to barren land nobody desired. As one Osage chief reportedly said when selecting this territory, "White man will never want this land." This forced relocation would eventually lead to wealth, comparable to winning a modern-day billion-dollar lottery, but with consequences far more complex than any jackpot winner might face. What nobody realized was that beneath this landscape lay one of America's richest oil fields. When the Osage negotiated their reservation terms in 1906, they secured both surface and mineral rights to their land. This crucial agreement meant they maintained ownership of anything valuable found beneath it, even if they sold portions of the surface. The first major oil discovery came in 1897, setting off what would become a black gold rush across Osage land. By 1920, the oil fields were producing millions of barrels annually. Companies desperate to drill paid increasingly high premiums to lease these rights, creating wealth practically overnight. The Osage established the headrights system to distribute this fortune. Every enrolled member received an equal share of the quarterly payments from oil royalties. These headrights could only be inherited, ensuring the wealth remained within the tribe. Quarterly payment ceremonies became community celebrations, with checks that would make even today's lottery winners envious. The transformation happened at breakneck speed. Simple wooden houses gave way to limestone mansions with marble staircases. Families purchased multiple automobiles when most Americans couldn't afford even one. Some Osage employed white servants, completely inverting the racial economic hierarchy of the time. As one journalist observed, where, a score of years ago, these Indians lived in tents, now there are beautiful homes, expensive automobiles, and every modern luxury that money can buy. This sudden wealth occurred in 1920s America, a society steeped in racial prejudice. Many white Americans were outraged seeing Native Americans living more luxuriously than themselves. Local newspapers published scornful accounts of rich Indians spending extravagantly, portraying them as unsophisticated people who didn't deserve their fortune. An Osage man was refused service at an Oklahoma City restaurant despite his wealth. Money couldn't buy equality in segregation-era America. By 1923, the Osage had achieved the unthinkable, becoming the richest people per capita worldwide. Oil leases generated over $30 million that year alone, equivalent to more than $400 million today. With fewer than 2,500 tribal members sharing this wealth, individual Osage became millionaires overnight. Some families received annual incomes exceeding $100,000, at a time when the average American worker earned about $750 per year. The guardian system, a trap disguised as protection. While their bank accounts may have been filled with oil money, the Osage found themselves trapped in a system that turned their fortune into a curse. The wealth that should have liberated them instead became the very thing that imprisoned them. Imagine being one of the richest people in America, yet needing permission from someone else to spend your own money, a guardian who could legally inherit your fortune upon your death. This government-created trap had deadly consequences. The guardianship system for the Osage, presented as financial help, quickly revealed its true purpose: control and exploitation. The government automatically labeled anyone with more than one-half Osage blood as incompetent to handle their finances, regardless of education or business experience. This racist policy based financial competence solely on the percentage of native blood in your veins. These guardians weren't chosen for their integrity, but appointed through political favoritism, creating a network of corruption throughout the county. Once appointed, they controlled every aspect of their Osage wards' economic lives, approving or denying all purchases, investments, and withdrawals. Consider what this meant day to day. If an Osage person wanted to buy groceries, clothes, or medicine for their children, they needed their guardian's permission. An Osage family might wait weeks for approval to repair a leaking roof while their guardian ignored their requests. Wealthy adults were reduced to dependents, forced to plead for access to money they rightfully owned. The scale of theft was staggering. Guardians charged excessive fees, withheld funds, and took kickbacks from local merchants who maintained a two-tier pricing system. A dress priced at $10 for a white woman might cost an Osage woman $50. Car dealers charged double or triple, knowing the Osage had no alternatives. The psychological impact was devastating. Imagine the humiliation of having millions in the bank, yet needing to justify every purchase to someone who viewed you as inherently inferior. Many Osage lived in constant anxiety, never knowing if their guardian would approve necessary expenses. This engineered helplessness served the system's true purpose: dependency and control. Despite fighting against this injustice, the Osage faced a system where every authority figure participated in the corruption. Their complaints were dismissed due to the era's pervasive racism. A 1924 Indian Rights Association report concluded that rich Oklahoma Indians were being shamelessly and openly robbed in a scientific and ruthless manner by their guardians. By 1924, investigators estimated at least $8 million had been stolen through this corrupt system. But perhaps most disturbing was the incentive structure built into the law. Guardians could legally inherit their ward's headrights upon death. The Foxes weren't just guarding the henhouse, they stood to inherit it if the hens disappeared. The system wasn't just broken, it was deliberately designed to transfer wealth through control, exploitation, and ultimately murder. The Reign of Terror, a pattern of mysterious deaths. The perverse incentive structure didn't just remain theoretical, it became a horrifying reality. The year 1921 marked the beginning of what would later be known as the Reign of Terror, a dark chapter in Osage history where those with headrights began dying under suspicious circumstances. The financial motive was clear: dead Osage were more profitable than living ones. The Reign of Terror unleashed methodical violence that devastated the Osage community through calculated murders designed to transfer wealth to white guardians. On May 27, 1921, Anna Brown's body was discovered in a remote ravine with a bullet wound to the back of her head. Despite the obvious violence, local authorities initially dismissed her death as accidental, attributing it to alcohol poisoning. Her cousin Charles Whitehorn was found dead that same day with 2 bullet holes in his head. 2 Osage individuals executed in identical fashion, marking the beginning of a sinister pattern. The violence spread rapidly through the Osage community. Within months, Anna's mother, Lizzie Q. Kyle, died under circumstances that community members immediately recognized as poisoning. Each death transferred valuable headrights to others, revealing the killer's systematic approach to acquiring Osage wealth. By 1923, the murders grew increasingly brazen. Henry Roan was found shot in his car on February 6th, with a suspicious $25,000 life insurance policy taken out on him shortly before his death, a policy benefiting someone outside his family. This financial preparation before murder demonstrated how thoroughly the crimes were premeditated. The March 10, 1923 bombing represented the violence at its most extreme. That night, 5 gallons of nitroglycerin placed beneath the home of Rita Smith, her husband Bill, and their servant Nettie Brookshire detonated with devastating force. The explosion shattered windows in nearby houses and scattered body parts across the area, a brutal demonstration that the killers would stop at nothing. The terror extended beyond the Osage themselves. W. Vaughn, an attorney investigating the murders, was killed after meeting with a dying Osage man who had information about the killings. His body was found beside railroad tracks after being thrown from a moving train. Barney McBride, an oilman seeking federal intervention, was discovered stabbed over 20 times in Washington, D.C. The message was unmistakable. Anyone helping the Osage would share their fate. The psychological impact devastated the community. Families lived in constant fear, keeping homes brightly lit throughout the night to discourage attackers. Many abandoned their properties altogether. Even routine activities became potentially life-threatening decisions: answering doors, accepting dinner invitations, taking prescribed medicine. For years, these murders continued with virtually no consequences. Local law enforcement, often complicit or intimidated, failed to provide justice. Coroners signed false death certificates. Witnesses disappeared or suddenly couldn't recall what they'd seen. The entire system protected the killers rather than the victims. This calculated genocide was driven by greed, perpetrated not by random criminals, but by respected community members, businessmen, doctors, and law enforcement officers hiding behind respectable facades, exploiting a system already designed to separate the Osage from their wealth. William Hale, the mastermind behind the murders. Like a wolf in shepherd's clothing, William K. Hale cultivated 2 identities in the Osage Hills: public savior and private predator. This cattleman signed his letters as Reverend, despite never being ordained, carried a Bible wherever he went, and personally served as a pallbearer at funerals of people he had ordered killed. This was the self-proclaimed king of the Osage Hills, a man whose carefully crafted public image concealed the architect of one of America's most calculated murder conspiracies. Born in 1874 in Texas, Hale arrived in Oklahoma by 1902 as a humble cowboy. Within a remarkably short time, this Bible-carrying newcomer transformed into one of the territory's most powerful figures, building a staggering 45,000-acre ranching empire through calculated ambition and ruthless determination. His meteoric rise followed a masterfully orchestrated path to power. Hale strategically positioned himself in the community, becoming a bank owner in Fairfax and securing appointment as deputy sheriff. These weren't random career moves, but calculated steps giving him control over both wealth and law enforcement simultaneously. The centerpiece of Hale's deception was his persona as the Osage people's greatest champion. He called himself their true friend, often signing correspondence as Reverend W.K. Hale, despite having no religious credentials. This religious facade helped him cultivate trust within a community naturally wary of white businessmen. Hale's scheme targeted the immense wealth of Osage headrights through a multi-year murder plot that began with family infiltration. He arranged for his nephew, Ernest Burkhart, to court and marry Molly Kyle, a wealthy Osage woman with significant family headrights. With Ernest now embedded in the family, Hale systematically eliminated Molly's relatives one by one. The same man who embraced Molly at gatherings was orchestrating her family's destruction. When Anna Brown's body was found with a bullet to the head, Investigators later discovered Hale had hired Kelsey Morrison for the killing. When Molly's mother Lizzie died of suspected poisoning, the trail led back to Hale's instructions. His murder of Henry Roan demonstrates his methodical cruelty. After securing a substantial $25,000 life insurance policy on Roan, claiming to be his best friend, Hale arranged his murder. Most chillingly, after orchestrating these killings, Hale attended the victims' funerals, offering condolences and serving as pallbearer, carrying the coffins of those whose deaths he had personally engineered. By day, Hale maintained his facade as community pillar, successful businessman, deputy sheriff, and caring reverend. By night, he plotted murders. This dual identity allowed him to gather intelligence, intimidate potential witnesses, and maintain perfect cover for years. The ultimate aim of Hale's conspiracy revealed its true brutality. By eliminating Molly's entire family, he ensured their headrights would consolidate to her. The final phase was perhaps most horrifying, having Ernest slowly poison his own wife, leaving his nephew, and by extension Hale himself, to inherit the combined wealth of multiple headrights. The investigation. How the FBI cracked the case. While Hale's murderous web seemed impenetrable, his downfall would come from an unexpected source, a fledgling federal agency that had never before tackled a case of this magnitude. Think about it. How do you investigate murders when the local sheriff might be on the payroll of the killer? For the Osage, this wasn't a hypothetical question, but their terrifying reality. The local investigation into the Osage murders was a theater of incompetence, corrupted to the core. When evidence clearly showed murder, coroners ruled deaths as suicides or accidents. Sheriffs deliberately failed to secure crime scenes, crucial evidence vanished, and witnesses who spoke up were silenced permanently. This system worked exactly as intended, to protect the perpetrators, while the Osage continued to die. After years of watching their loved ones perish without justice, the Osage Tribal Council took a desperate step. They bypassed the corrupt local authorities and appealed directly to the federal government. Their plea reached J. Edgar Hoover, who saw in the Osage murders an opportunity to transform his Bureau of Investigation into a professional law enforcement organization. Hoover appointed Tom White, a former Texas Ranger with an impeccable reputation, to lead what became the Bureau's first major homicide investigation. White immediately recognized what local authorities had deliberately ignored. These weren't random deaths, but a calculated conspiracy targeting the oil-wealthy Osage. White revolutionized the investigation approach. In a community where outsiders were instantly suspected, he assembled undercover agents who infiltrated Osage County's social fabric. One agent, posing as a cattleman, gained the trust of a local bartender, who eventually revealed how Hale would celebrate with drinks after each successful business venture, always coinciding with Osage deaths. These federal investigators faced enormous challenges. Witnesses lived in terror, knowing cooperation meant death. False leads deliberately misdirected them. Even legally, the Bureau struggled, as murder wasn't yet a federal crime, forcing them to build cases around other violations to maintain jurisdiction. Despite these obstacles, White's team meticulously gathered evidence. They uncovered Hale's $25,000 insurance policy on Henry Roan, an enormous sum in the 1920s that suspiciously paid out to Hale when Roan was found murdered. They tracked money flowing to known hitmen immediately after Osage deaths. Witness testimonies, when connected, created a damning picture pointing directly at Hale. The investigation's breakthrough finally came through Ernest Burkhart, Hale's nephew who had married into the Osage family. After agents presented him with overwhelming evidence and testimony implicating him in the deaths of his wife's family members, Burkhart cracked. His emotional confession revealed Hale as the mastermind and exposed the full machinery of murder. Local bootleggers, hired killers, and corrupt officials, all playing their parts in the systematic elimination of Osage for their oil wealth. Burkhart's confession wasn't clean. He retracted under pressure, then reaffirmed when seeking cooperation with prosecutors. This vacillation created challenges during the trials, but it had given investigators what decades of corrupt local investigations couldn't: direct evidence linking Hale to the methodical murder of Osage tribal members for their money. Justice delayed, the trials and their aftermath. Even with Burkhart's confession securing the evidence needed for trial, justice for the Osage remained far from guaranteed. Would a system that had enabled these murders suddenly deliver fair verdicts? The courtroom battles between 1926 and 1929 exposed how deeply corruption had penetrated the justice system itself, creating almost insurmountable barriers to accountability. The first major trial began in June 1926 when Ernest Burkhart pleaded guilty to the murder of William E. Smith. His confession earned him a life sentence, but the legal saga was only beginning. Under intense pressure from Hale's defense team, Burkhart soon recanted his confession, throwing the prosecution's case into disarray. This flip-flopping created a legal nightmare, with Burkhart's testimony changing multiple times throughout different proceedings. Finding impartial jurors proved nearly impossible in a community where William Hale had wielded immense influence for decades. Many potential jurors had business connections to Hale, while others simply refused to believe that a respected community leader could orchestrate such heinous crimes. How could justice prevail in a town where the accused murderer was considered untouchable? The courtroom proceedings revealed the full extent of the community's complicity. Systematic corruption infected every aspect of the judicial process. Doctors falsified death certificates, witnesses changed their stories after threats, and defense attorneys worked to discredit evidence. Local officials deliberately overlooked clues that might have stopped the killing years earlier. For families like the Kyles, who had already endured the murder of their loved ones, this corruption felt like a second betrayal. Despite these challenges, federal prosecutors eventually secured convictions. In October 1929, William Hale was found guilty in federal court for the murder of Henry Roan and received a life sentence. Other accomplices like John Ramsey and Kelsey Morrison also received life sentences for their roles in various murders. For a brief moment, the Osage community dared to hope justice might prevail, but what followed shocked even the most cynical observers. None of these murderers would serve their full sentences. Hale, the mastermind behind dozens of killings, served only 18 years before being released in 1947 through the direct intervention of President Harry S. Truman. This wasn't based on new evidence of innocence, but rather on Hale's political connections to Missouri politics and local power structures. Ernest Burkhart, who had married Molly Kyle as part of Hale's scheme and participated in the murder of her family members, received a full pardon in 1965 from Governor Henry Bellman, despite his own confession. The Osage community watched in disbelief as their loved ones' killers walked free through political connections. For families like Molly Kyle's, who had trusted the American justice system to deliver accountability, these early releases represented the final betrayal. How could a system claim equality while valuing some lives so differently than others? The message was unmistakable. Even confessed murderers of Native Americans could find paths to freedom through the right political channels. For the Osage Nation, the trials and subsequent releases confirmed what many already suspected. Their lives were valued differently in the American justice system. Conclusion. Like a phoenix rising from the ashes, the Osage Nation stands as a powerful example of resilience. Despite the devastating history we've explored, they've transformed from victims of America's darkest conspiracy into architects of their own future. Their 7 casinos now generate more revenue than the oil that once made them targets, allowing them to invest in education, healthcare, and cultural preservation. In 2011, after decades of struggle, the US government finally admitted its culpability in mismanaging Osage funds and settled claims for approximately $380 million. While no amount can truly compensate for systematic murder and exploitation, this acknowledgement represents a crucial step toward justice. What makes the Osage story so powerful is how they've reclaimed their narrative and rebuilt their community. What might we learn from their journey about justice, memory, and the enduring strength of a people who refuse to be erased?